because we had a couple of problems here. Um, and we seem to be going live with the Lessons Learned podcast. Hi and welcome all. I took a we might not have the entire podcast today because apparently my machine's like, yeah, I don't want to do no work today. So yeah, putting all things together. So if it just goes boom, then you're being warned. So we have quite a bit of news to talk about. As it is, since we talked about
quite a bit.
yeah, quite a bit of news, and we're also going to talk about a very interesting subject. Which I warn you, if you, I'm basically gonna take the hard line on this, and hopefully Chapelmont can sort of counter my points, and we can have a civil discussion about this. Well, we always do have a civil discussion, but it is what it is. It can get, I can get pretty excited about it. So let's get started. Let's get started with the news about Anthem. I think that's a pretty good place to start. According to there's two sets of news. First of all, the first piece of news is that according to projections by EA, they think that Anthem will be doing very well. Thank you very much, in spite of all the doom and gloom about being, the make or break game for
BioWare.
BioWare. See, I'm still thinking about computer problems. But on the other hand, there's also news that basically it will not necessarily be the typical BioWare game.
Yeah, it's apparently, well, this is sort of related on to our topic. It's that they seem to be like, oh, hey, we're so glad that we focus more on gameplay than story, which is kind of the opposite of what BioWare is sort of known for.
Because I forgot to turn on the mic, of course, so people did. Well, I was like, bah, 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 and not yakking, so all the intro went to hell in a handbasket. Wonderful. Welcome back again to the program, folks. Like we said, we are talking about video game news and stuff. So yeah, I think that's interesting. But my take on it is, I don't know, maybe not one that a lot of people would be happy with, is that you have to look at the nature of the game we're talking about here, right? This is going to be games of service. This is an MMO light. You go around and have all these activities and stuff like that. Having a lot of story, you can have that. I think a lot of people have described SWTOR as almost like a single player MMO, right? But at the same time, SWTOR was still alive because it is the Star Wars franchise. It isn't record breaking, except to how expensive it was versus how quickly it went to free to play. So it's not really, I suppose it's a money earner for EA. We don't really know. But I don't think they want to repeat the same. They're looking at Destiny. Think about Destiny. Destiny now has a story of sorts.
Yeah.
Missing Destiny 2, but it spent like the first year of its existence raking millions of dollars without any real story. Same thing with GTA 5. You have the single player, but the multiplayer is that it's like, oh, you want to have a multiplayer game where you're busy running, jumping, gunning, coordinating with your teammates, and have a story delivered to you at the same time. That's kind of hard to do. They try to do that with Titanfall. I remember Titanfall, you're playing and somebody was in a corner, or like, hey, you have to do this, and this is happening, and you're like, I'm shooting bad guys. It just what? I don't care. It's not a point of contention. So what do you think about that?
So I think in terms of story, it almost feels like there's just going to be like those cutscenes where it's like establishing characters and stuff, and a lot of it seems like it's just going to be relegated to the hub area, where it's like, oh, you set up and go take on missions and whatnot, and that's where all the story happens, and then the stuff that happens in like the open world part isn't going to be so much story. It's just going to be like more of an adventure. So not necessarily like some sort of like arcing story thing. It might be more of like mini adventures and mini-sodes and misadventures and whatnot. But it's sort of people who are fans of BioWare, they're probably feeling a little like apprehensive now. When
Yeah.
it's like, oh, hey, a company that's known for crafting stories is kind of seems like they're happy to be moving away from that when it comes to Anthem.
Or they being essentially ordered to do that by EA. Again, we have that economy of how much control EA has on a particular game projects, and this definitely feels like EA saying we need our own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
So, and who's gonna make it? Oh, you guys have experience in making MMO, and you do sci-fi stuff, and we want a sci-fi Destiny thing. So there you go. Right, go ahead. Right, not that there won't be a story, but I think if you're thinking of a single-player story-driven campaign, that Anthem is typically is not it.
Yeah.
And then that leads to fears that quote-unquote Bioware is learning lessons from Anthem, even before it's done, and will be applied to stuff like Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age 4, 5, whatever they're gonna name it, and maybe a resurgence of Mass Effects. Who knows, right? If they're gonna bring it back from the grave. So there is that. Talking also about live services, we have news from the Fallout 76 beta. Yeah. Oh, Bethesda. I mean,
So Bethesda's launcher. So this is going to be. I can't honestly off the top of my head think of like what other games are just exclusive to this launcher or Bethesda's own proprietary launcher, but this seems to be sort of like the money maker, or they're going to be their hey, this is going to be our launcher going forward. We're going to have like launchers on or all our releases are just going to be on this launcher. And so they've been limiting their their alphas or their betas, their quote unquote betas, because it's not really much of a beta, in terms of hey, if you have access to the beta, you can only play between these hours. So people have been preloading their all the game in terms of downloading all those files before that time period. So that way, once the betas open up, they're ready to go. Just launch the game and should be smooth sailing from there. But not quite so much, because apparently there was an error or there was a bug of some sort with the launcher that if you pretty much clicked on anything while the game was downloading, the launcher would not download the game properly, and it would just flat out delete the 50 gigabytes of data that you just spent 5-6 hours, probably longer if you have slower internet, downloading this. And the window is only like 4 hours.
which means if it took you more than 15 minutes to load this stuff because you don't have fiber in your house, you're screwed.
Yep.
Bethesda. And I mean, yes, Todd Howard, I know sometimes things don't work. And a lot of people have forgiven stuff like this before. And by the way, Fallout 76 doesn't have a story because it really doesn't have NPCs. That's another, storyless MMO light. It is what it is. I mean, let's call them what they are. They're MMO light services. Most of the time, they're MMO lights. Maybe they don't have like 10,000 players at the same time, the same servers, and they don't work necessarily in the same way that World of Warcraft does. So you don't have like 20 people in an instant, but it's like 4 or 5 people, and the business model is an MMO. The focus on multiplayer. It's multiplayer without the massive part of it. There's an MO. It's a multiplayer online game. That's what it is, right? Without the massive on it, right? The MO or MPO, I want to call it, right? But I call it MMO lights because
and
they are, right?
Bethesda's also said that the game's gonna have microtransactions. They're all gonna be cosmetic only. There's no loot boxes. There's no pay to win mechanics. But that's also kind of par for the course at this point for games as services.
Yeah.
Another small thing that I heard about the Bethesda 76 is that there's a speed exploit that you can it's very easy to do, because since the creation engine is based off of Gamebryo, the Gamebryo engine, the player's movement is tied in to frames of FPS. So if you have really fast FPS, your character moves much faster than anybody else's character. So
No wonder they were not going to do crossplay with consoles on 76.
yeah, so you can just go in there, edit the cap for the frame rates, and you can move a lot faster. You can shoot a lot faster.
So on top of you have faster internet, you have less drops. If you have a faster computer, you have faster rate frame rate. So somebody
Yep.
who has a good rig and good or better internet than you will just run around circles shooting you or whatever and dropping nukes on your head, and you're like, you probably won't be able to see them. Yeah, some people will call them teething problems at this, but really,
Yeah.
it's more like
And this isn't something they can fix really easily either because this is built into the engine.
talk about also games that get deleted if you are not very careful. The uninstaller for was it Deltarune, which is a free follow up to Undertale,
Yeah, and it's almost like a demo or sort of like a
first chapter
like-
thing.
yeah.
And the thing about it is, like, played it. People who played it or enjoyed it. People who like Undertale. I have to play Undertale. I criminally never played that game. I should have played it for Halloween, but I'm still playing Kingmaker. Anywho, yes, I know I'm not a good gamer, folks. When you uninstall it, because that you basically the idea was you get the survey and you fill in the survey by the creator of Undertale, and you got the free download. Well, it's a free game, cool. But the way the uninstall is set up is that it will erase not only Deltarune, but also anything and everything in that folder. So say that you typically put games in you have your games folder, and that's where you have Deltarune, and all of a sudden you lose all your games.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Whoops.
There's a way of doing it, and people have been linking to say having different recovery things if it happens, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's a one-man team, I suppose, but still, ouch.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And well, of course, that's big news too. The creator of Undertale has released is at least teasing a new game, or we're quite not clear what this is. Is it a sequel? Is it a prequel? Is it an alternate reality thing? And is it going to be episodic? Is it going to be maybe won't see anything more from this game at all? Who knows? I mean, as and I got to take a minute and say, I'm a big Undertale fan. I love the games. I'm actually disappointed. I enjoyed the demo. I actually spent my afternoon and my evening and stayed up late last night playing it and completing it. I had fun, loved the characters, but I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that Toby Fox kind of chose that his next, this is whatever this is a dip into a new project, potentially new game, and it's like, oh, you're dipping back into the Undertale well again instead of making something new or like making a new IP or granted there's new things and stuff in here. It's basically taking the mechanics of the first game and elaborating on it, which is always great. That's a great for sequels. But again, it's sort of like you're sort of an indie developer and you have that risk. Your indie developers are kind of known for risk, and here when like the market right now, the gaming industry is just full of sequels and spin-offs, and they just kind of refuse to invest in new IPs. It's just a little disappointing to see that Toby Fox is just kind of dipping back into the Undertale well again. And granted, like, well, that doesn't mean I wouldn't buy it or anything. It's just that's just my personal expectations.
Yeah, I understand. I think a lot of people probably go like, but it's more Undertale. I want more Undertale.
Yeah,
but
it's sort of, it's at the same time, it's kind of like I'm gonna bring him up like Jim Sterling. We have like commentators like that who bring up that the gaming industry is just full of sequels and nothing new and stuff. But then we got Toby Fox here, who great game, great ideas and stuff. but is kind of doing the same thing, and everyone praises that, and it's like no one's gonna ever probably criticize that, but it's like, we got to be fair. He is dipping back into kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah, well, I think it's ironic because we like to think of indie games as being able to make or trying to make the especially like Undertale, for example, and going back into
Yeah.
retro NES style and making the kind of games that the AAA industry doesn't make. So they're trying to be more innovative. But the reality is that one of the reasons why we tend to criticize the AAA industry for not making risk is that they have the resources, they have the
Yes.
millions and billions of dollars to make new games. They choose not to because they want to make more money. Where in fact the reality is that most indie game developers, even one as successful as someone who makes something like an Undertale, if they try to make something that is different, people are like, oh, but we wanted more Undertale. Never mind.
Yeah, you kind of have to take the good with the bad.
Yeah,
And
I mean, he only has. I mean, probably has more projects out there, but we only know of the one, right? That's the one he's known for.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, from the makers of Undertale, we got, I don't know, Shark Season. You're like, what? But what is this? It's like, I don't know, 3D shark. You're swimming around as a shark in the Southern Ocean, which actually there was a game like a couple of years ago that was like, wait, and like, but I just wanted more puzzles and cute
Characters.
kids running around, and it's like, it's a catch 22, and I don't blame it
Yeah.
for that. Um, you mentioned also talking about indie games and the like. You mentioned that there's a new agreement between Target and what was the
Or
company
Best
and
Buy.
Best Buy and
Best
Limited
Buy.
Run Games. Yeah.
Limited run games. So the less as a customer of limited run games, I've actually bought my I got my Undertale special edition collector's thing. Actually, was it from there? Or actually, I think they have a partnership with Fan Gamer.
Hmm.
They kind of release like limited run games too. I got a collector's edition of Undertale. Um, so it seems that limited runs, for those who don't know, is a company that specializes in releasing physical versions of indie games that most of the time you're only going to ever find online. They're either sold through Steam, itchy.io, or the marketplaces of Sony and Microsoft through their Xbox Live and their PlayStation Network. So if it, of course, the fear is, as we talked many times on this program, is that what happens if these servers go down permanently or these services, then that those games are lost forever unless
Hmm.
you've already downloaded them and backed them up in some form.
And
So they
don't
special,
get erased by an uninstaller.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So these are also for people who like having physical copies as well. Like you get a nice package, print, you get standard cover for cases and whatnot. Sometimes they have special editions with additional goodies if you're into that sort of thing. And of course, physical media in terms of a disc or a cartridge for like the Vita, they've actually started doing the Switch releases of games. And this is where sort of it seems that they're disclosing, because these are limited run games. So once they take pre-orders, they manufacture them, and once they've created them, that's it. They do not go back and retroactively make more copies of or more releases of these games.
Hmm.
So they they told their customers that, yeah, so we have a partnership with Best Buy. They actually want to have order some games, some indie games from us, so they can sell either online or on in their physical stores. And we just feel like to disclose this isn't like any kind of, it's not going to cut back on like what's the pre-orders available to our customers. This is going to be their separate order,
Hmm.
but those are also going to be limited as well. So once we only give them a few copies and that's it,
Hmm.
they're going to be distinguishable from the other ones because special editions and whatnot. So they're going to have alternate copy or covers and stuff. So I think that, and so far they've disclosed that they're looking, Best Buy's looking to order 3 games from them, which is Yooka-Laylee for
Hmm.
the Switch, Golf Story for the Switch, and then some, I guess they have like they're working on releasing something else that's unannounced, so they're not gonna, but they're interested in that, and I think it's a safe bet that it's likely for the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
So I think aside from like them having this partnership, I find it interesting that Best Buy, as we all know, that physical brick and mortar stores are kind of struggling to keep up with the marketplace, that they're actually kind of investing in like, hey, maybe we could offer certain products or exclusive products in our physical stores that no one else carries.
Yeah, but I think it basically for the Switch. Switch has a big and Nintendo products, have a younger audience.
Yeah.
So I think it's a kind of product that if you walk now, that for example, we're coming to the holidays. Parents come in, they're looking for TVs, they're looking for this, maybe looking for a console. It's like they look at the rack of games, very thin on the PC side, very thin on the Xbox side, but the Switch is probably going to be stock. Literally, the kid probably has a Switch on his hands and he said, "Mama, I want to play that game." It's like, what is that for? For this. Okay, grab it. Okay, it's like $20. It's an indie game, $20. Okay, I got $20 on my purse. We go to buy it. You got yourself a new game, right?
Oh yeah, especially I was going to bring it up, the holiday seasons. Like you see it in the physical store, and it also exposes, I guess, like a customer base that wouldn't even know that these games exist if they don't shop on the e-store and whatnot of Nintendo. So it does open up this. I kind of took a field trip down to Best Buy because it has been a long time since I've been to Best Buy. So it seems like they're kind of following in suit with like places with GameStop and stuff, and stocking a lot of toys and a lot of like knickknacks. Although it does seem like they're cutting back a little more on those. I mean, they're still loaded way too much with like freaking Funko Pop cap figures. And I kind of looked at it. They don't really have a place or like a dedicated section in terms of where their shelving is for special editions and whatnot. They're just kind of put wherever near like the rack of video games. They're kind of stacked rather like almost like if you were going to go out to a rental store, which is kind of for me.
Yeah, but again, I think it's easy accessibility. And now that I think about it, literally I think the Switch might be positioned in such a way to make a killing. They probably made a killing last Christmas, but now that they sold so many consoles, I mean, I can easily see a lot of kids with their parents, and the kid literally has, because somewhere they have the Switch on their hands because they're just portable, right?
Yeah.
And they go to a store, and the store has it, and it's like, that for this, how much?
Right. And then you can't get it anywhere else too.
So it's only exclusive, right? So it's like, yeah, I want to play that, and it's like, oh, it's a Nintendo thing. That's something I think nobody else really has, because, for example, literally have a parent that, and we still have a lot of parents who don't know anything about video games or consoles, whatever. It's a Nintendo or a Sony Nintendo or X Station, right? They don't know, and that's fine because that's not what they do. I mean, I don't want to make fun of them so much as like people don't know, but they don't know, they don't experience. But literally, if you're running around with a child in the store going, and they have a Switch on themselves, right? It's like you go to the store clerk goes like, okay, I want a game for that. I mean, that's the easiest thing. Talking about that is I think one of the reasons why the 3DS, well, another piece of news for Nintendo, is still being supported by Nintendo for the foreseeable future. And when they see foreseeable future, it basically means the next fiscal year at least. So that fiscal year ends in February, I think, or March. So
and the line of 3DS has been around for 9 years, apparently. It's been 9 years since at least the first iteration of the 3DS has been out. So that is quite a long time to be supporting hardware like that.
That means it must be making sales, and not merely in Japan. Well, very popular in Japan. It must be making sales worldwide. Although we are seeing a transition. I think the article I watched, the news piece I watched in the Know, that they're making a lot of companies are making the transition from stuff that they were only 3DS or included 3DS sales to putting it now on the Switch. So they're seeing Switch growth as being the place to go. But again, it's a thing. It's like, oh, you have this game in your hand. it's so easy to buy rather than the machine that is broken and not activated. It's like, was that the thing you have at home? No, yeah, it's kind of like that, and you have the kid trying to explain to their mom or dad. It's like, well, it's kind of similar. It's like, oh, whatever. I don't have time for this. Let's just grab the TV and let's go. It's whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know, right? That kind of thing. It's pretty powerful, right?
Hmm.
And it may not be drive a lot of sales, but every sale counts, right?
Oh yeah,
Um,
especially in this market.
Especially in this market.
But yeah, the Nintendo, back to like my little field trip, Nintendo has pretty good stock. They're kind of cut back on their amiibos, which I'm kind of surprised. I guess it sort of makes sense. I think the amiibo craze has kind of died down a little. And what I noticed too with the biggest release, which was last Friday, was that Red Dead Redemption. It seems like they had no copies of Red Dead Redemption on the sales floor at the very least for the PlayStation 4. There
Mhm.
were a few for the Xbox One, just kind of littered here and there, but for the most part, a lot of their copies were gone. They
Mm.
just gone. And as we've been probably hearing, the game's been selling really well.
Yeah, it's in spite of everything we
Hmm.
talked about, including the 100 plus hours and all that. It's all very well. In fact, I think every streamer watch, they're playing on the PlayStation, which sort of reinforces Sony's dominance on the market, right?
Yep.
You watch it on the PlayStation. Somebody playing on the PlayStation. You probably have a PlayStation you own. That's the version you're gonna buy, etc., etc., etc. It means that about next, we're probably gonna hear rumblings about this, more solid rumblings next year about who's gonna release what around Christmas next year, 2019. So the window for the new consoles is gonna be 2019 to 2021.
Hmm.
I Somebody who wants to jump early will probably release in 2019. Somebody who wants to wait or is not ready yet will probably releasing to later on the 2021, because once past that year, the machines that are already here, even the new updated versions of both the Xbox and the PlayStation will be too old
Hmm.
in the minds of people, right? It'll be too long going. And so, it's part of the market. Talking again about Switch and talking about old machines, a slight rate of hope, and I'm going to read this. This is from Forbes. Sega is having some exciting talks about Dreamcast games on Switch.
Mm.
Um, in a recently published interview with Famitsu, it's a Japanese gaming publication, Sega M2 president Naoki Hori, or Hori Naoki, has revealed the company is having serious discussion about whether to emulate the games or utilize existing source code to port them over to the Switch. Sega still holding cards close to its vest, but when asked to comment about Sega Ages line expanding to Dreamcast games, which means that the stuff that already published in other machines, mostly Nintendo, who used to be their prime competitor back in the day. Here's how Hori recently told Famitsu. It's kindly translated by Nintendo everything. At the time, it seemed like that we were able to emulate Dreamcast software on Nintendo Switch, depending on whether you're emulating software or remaking the source code entirely. Porting something is completely different. I think Sega chose some of the titles based on that. No doubt, emulation increased the number of titles that we're able to choose from. And for those people who don't know anything about the the Dreamcast, that was a machine that was supposed to dominate the market. That was supposed to be Sega's entry in 1999. Talk about 2019, 2021. It came out in 1999, and essentially it was a very powerful machine for the time. It had a built-in, I think it had a built-in hard drive. Also had a built-in 56K modem for online gaming and all that. And by 2000, because of situation happened with Sega, it became Sega's last true console, as opposed to the remakes that they launched, stuff like that. Which also Nintendo is also, sorry, Sony also has launched or announced that they're going to launch a classic as well, PS1 or PSX classic, but we'll talk about it in a second. And a lot of games came out for that in that era that were pretty good. This is the era where, especially with the Sega Dreamcast, the idea of catching up to arcades
Hmm.
was long gone. Like many times the versions on the PSX or PlayStation 1, later on the Xbox and the Dreamcast were better than the arcades, because the power differential, the cost of making these consoles was cheap enough, especially with CD-ROMs. that it could not only simply emulate, they could outgun the arcades. But by this time, arcades are really, at least in America, has shrunk into almost nothing too. So
Yeah.
they were. I mean, you can still find arcade machines, especially in dedicated bars and stuff like that. But uh, there was always been a gap until that final, late 1990s, early 2000s. That's when you started seeing more and more comparisons later on with consoles and PC, which is something that had sort of happened before, but it was never taken seriously until machines like the Xbox OC and the PlayStation 2 particularly came out into the scene. But Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi, there were a lot of good games in that first run for the Dreamcast. And because the Dreamcast just crashed and burned, now most of these days you want to get those games, you have to get a ROM and an emulator somewhere, right? Or have the original hardware if you can find it.
I think the original hardware probably goes expensive, and so does the games.
Yeah. And so it's not easy to do. And if they can do this, and again, talking about 1999, 2019, it's a 20-year gap. The little portable Switch could bring a lot of cool games. I mean, they might look a bit jagged on the edges, but one of the things about Dreamcast and Sega at the time was that they were making 3D games, but they realized that making 3D games that were tried to be realistic was going to look very blocky. And so you start seeing also transition to more rounded shapes and more cartoony characters to cover the bases of not having sort of very triangular and blocky characters that you had in the first generation of fully 3D games. Or at least 3D games with characters, games with 3D characters on them. So that was a compromise. So I hope that actually works out, because I think there'll be a great catalog, and I think it fits with Nintendo having more games than everybody else, right? It's all about the hardware. It's all about the software library at this point. You also talk about that's BB. Let me see other news that we have. I think we talked about most of it. Let's talk about Call of Duty Black Ops.
Yeah, so apparently Call of Duty Black Ops only made $500 million. Only $500 million. I mean,
just a bit.
That's just half a million or $500 million. And apparently that was enough to disappoint investors. And their Activision stock dropped just a little, not a whole lot, but just a little.
They lost about anywhere between 15 to 25% of their total, something like that. No, something like between 5 to 7%. I think.
Yeah,
so that would be exaggeration. That would be billions of dollars if that were the case.
At least it's being speculated that, because it seems that the drop kind of coincided with them releasing the numbers of how much Call of Duty Black Ops 4 has sold. Mm-hmm. So people are assuming that the investors weren't happy with the growth, because they see this as it didn't sell as well as I think some other Call of Duty game I can't even bother recalling, because they're all kind of the same to me. Mm-hmm. So this goes with we've brought this issue up before. It's like you can't just keep setting these expectations that the next game is going to sell more than the other, because at some point you're going to hit a ceiling. Mm-hmm. Or you're just going to end up coming short to that ceiling, and it's going to be seen as a failure because, it didn't sell as much as we expected. Never mind that the game may be, I'm not entirely sure about Call of Duty, but may be critically acclaimed and critically received and gotten all these awards. Everyone loves it. Everyone's bought a copy, but not enough people bought these copies. So
yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I mean, Call of Duty released about 2 weeks ago. Red Dead came after, you have that. And I think, and also in November as well, this is the big release part of the year. Here in March, including March is becoming as big as November, but November to December, right? Late October to early December, with November being the month, right? It's the big game syndrome. We talked about this many times before. There's millions of gamers worldwide. There's billions of dollars to be made. But eventually, if you end up with the big game, if you're literally your time, if you're spending, and I know this as a streamer, right? If I'm playing right now Kingmaker, I'm not playing other games when I'm playing Kingmaker. I may play a side game in an hour or two on the weekends or something, but that's my main focus, right? It's not a huge game, but it's a game I'm playing. Right? I can't play two games at the same time. So most people like, and if you're spending not $60, but $70, $80, $90, $100 on a game, because you want the special edition, whatever you want, the pre-order bonuses, all those things, and on top of that, you're also spending money on microtransactions, whatever that may be. That is your time sink and your money sink.
Oh yeah, like I am playing Yakuza 0 right now, and that game is there's just so much to do, so many little like mini games and like mini mechanics and stuff that you just got to go through to improve your stats and stuff. Like yesterday with Deltarune, I essentially just had to drop that game and just focus. It pretty much took me like 8 hours in between having to do other things and eat and take breaks to get through Deltarune. So that pretty much just ate up my afternoon. So I can't imagine trying to even like juggle work, life, and juggle another game that's supposed to be, I'm supposed to get, so not just invest my time but my money and my attention to,
And
because it's a live service.
Yeah, and the thing is also live service maintaining the livability, I suppose. It's like, oh, this is the great game. I played it for a week or two or three. I'm done, right? It just becomes a game in the library, right? It's like, oh, I'll get back to it eventually. I have a couple of games that I've started and I'll get back to that game again. I basically have two games. I have whatever I'm playing on stream, and then I have another game, and that game is right now Skyrim because it's another time sink. But it's a game I can jump into Skyrim, do a couple of hours, and then I don't go to sleep or something, right? Or I'm bored, or I have the demo for Project Wingman, which is hopefully it's a game that will come a couple of years next year, which is a fighter combat flight sim. But I just played that one mission for 15 minutes, and that's it, right? That's very short, very intense. But I don't have enough time in the day, even though playing games is the thing I do nowadays, to play like 5 games. So people they're gonna choose their fighter, right? They're gonna choose their game, and that's gonna be it. And when you have one major release after another, either people are gonna jump from one to the other, gonna play this and gonna play this and gonna play this and jump, or they're just gonna they're gonna pick the one, and that's gonna be it. So and then of course you have the sort of what increasingly becoming unrealistic expectations that you can sell 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 million copies, unless people are buying like 3 or 4 or 5 copies each. That's not gonna happen. So
or maybe that's why Ubisoft likes to spread out, like cut content and put it in different editions, so you have to buy multiple editions.
Yeah, and also I think essentially for Battlefield, we're hearing that there's a lot more content that is not being released at once. So again, the problem of, are you getting a complete or as complete experience as you can? With the live service, because it's the MMO model, for the record, you're not. They're gonna drip feed you content, but if you're still thinking in the mode of, I'm gonna buy this game and just play it, then that means what are you going to do? We talked about this before. You're going to wait. And people who wait don't participate in the business model. And when they buy the game on a deep discount 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, or the Game of the Year edition, whatever you want to do to repackage to sell the game, you're going to make like less of a profit, right? It's not going to be reflected the same way it's going to be reflected on the score sheet, on the spreadsheets, when you go to the investor and say, this game makes so much. Yeah, you made that game 6 months ago, and now we're seeing a profit, and it's spread out over weeks and months, maybe a year or more. That's not the explosive growth we're looking for, and you're promising with your microtransactions and your live services. Oh, there you go. Not a thing. What else might be out there? Any other news? Oh yeah, another piece of news. Well, I'm not going to say that because people are going to head over there. But I want a quick shout out to Adam Koppel, who is his birthday, November the 1st. And he's still in the age where he's actually telling people how old he is. So I can actually repeat the fact that he has a very happy 35th birthday. So if you see him on Twitch or wherever on Twitter, just wish him a happy birthday. And we here on the Lessons Learned podcast, we're wishing him a very happy birthday. Have a nice
Happy
day.
birthday.
So I think we can, unless we have any other pieces of news, we can actually jump into the main meat of what we're going to talk about today. The way I wrote the byline was the podcast, as in, do you have to sacrifice gameplay for accessibility? Warning. Like I said earlier in the program, I don't know if people heard me or not because I was messing with the audio. I'm going to take the hard stand, the conservative hard stand, because people who are watching this podcast and watching me play, they know I'm pretty conservative when it comes to certain things, like just what is and isn't in the game, and what's the story versus gameplay and all of that. So I'm going to take that line. But I'm also going to put it forward to Chapelmont and to you to chat to challenge that, respectfully, of course, so we can have a conversation. So I'm not going to say I'm going to defend my position, but, because this is a very touchy subject. Because there's two things that I noticed, because this ironically comes from Tumblr, of all places, because I saw there was a reaction to an article that suggested essentially that in order to make games more accessible, maybe games should have an option to skip combat. And some people reacted the way I guess I would react, which is, well, if that's what you want. And somebody reacted in all caps, which I think was the right thing to do, was like, then go watch a movie, right? And that kind of reaction is like, seems very gatekeeping. Like, oh, if you don't like it, then get out, right? I understand the sentiment, but the way it was expressed, it wasn't the best. And so you got into this back and forth, people saying, no, but I this and that. And the question of accessibility, I mean, who gets to play games, who once came up, as well as gameplay and what is and isn't a game. So let's start with accessibility, right? I think everybody can agree to this. My point of view on accessibility, which is not very hardcore, I think it's common sense, at least I think so, is that you can do a lot, and you should, if possible, do as much as possible to make games accessible. I.e., colorblind modes. There's improve FOB. Everybody had this running joke with the late Total Biscuit, and he would talk about FOBs, which I thought was FOB, but actually it was FOV, field of view. It turns out that he actually had to use glasses, change his prescription, because he had some problems with that. So, make games that are available for more people like that. Change or add control schemes to your games. Support more controllers, even if they're weird or different, because not everybody can use standard controllers the same way, right? So have different control schemes, and have those control schemes on the keyboard, on the mouse, on using a controller, or different controllers, and different ways to reprogram them. Maybe have presets, because people, again, tweaking stuff might be difficult for people, because they might not know, you make a little change and then it becomes unplayable. So have more presets and more controller support. When, for example, you're using a PC game and you minimize the screen, have captions in your games for all the things that you need to have captions, and have the captions actually be bigger, not smaller, right? So that way, somebody who is, can see the game as well, somebody else, but nearsighted or even perhaps clinically blind might be able to actually read what's on screen, right? And be able, or maybe have a function to adjust that. Then we come to difficulty. People say, oh, games shouldn't be ultra hard. And this is where it really got into, a lot of people got defensive. Like, oh, people who are criticizing this are just the people who are hardcore triple X gamers, and they can win all these games, or we can. So, like, I am not opposed to changing modes. If, again, going back to Pathfinder Kingmaker, that game has a lot of what's called quality of life improvements. And I think I love about the game is that it's very granular when it comes to difficulty. It has a custom difficulty thing. For example, you can click different choices. One of the choices that is not in the normal difficulty, which I always play, but I actually click it, so I'm playing on a slightly easier difficulty, is that if you're fighting in the game and one of your guys goes down, but the other party members are up, then they don't die. They get revived at the end. They're wounded, they're severely wounded, so you have to heal them, but they're still around. Where in the normal difficulty, if they're dead, they're dead. They have death's door, but it's very easy to fireball something to kill them, and then you have to have a, potion or spell or a magic item to revive them, and you may not have that, so you're dragging around a dead body. That means if you have other encounters, you want more and more. It's harder.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to people modding their games as well, But then we got into the meat of the game of the discussion is hey, maybe you should be able to skip that. And my reaction to that is there comes up. This is something of diminishing returns. It comes to a point where if you are, and we already seen this, like the Assassin's Creed, not this particular game, the previous one, Origins, had a sort of walk around mode, stuff like that. My visceral conservative, and it is a conservative point of view of like, I like to keep games as they are kind of point of view, literally conservative, is this is a dead end, right? You keep stripping features from video games, especially gameplay elements. At some point, they stop being games. And I think a lot of people said, "Oh, but I just want to play for the gameplay. I don't want to do pointless combat. I don't want to do this." And it's like, again, my reaction, and I probably was we'll talk about the internet here, so you're typing as opposed to speaking to people. They're not seeing my face, hearing my voice, and probably getting some nuance, although it may come off as being gruffer than I should be, is that maybe there's two things. We're talking about this for A, you're playing a not so well designed game. Either this particular thing is badly designed or the overall game is badly designed. Because if the gameplay is not engaging, the thing the video game is asking you to do in order to just experience the game, the main way you experience that game is broken or badly done. It seems like pointless or grindy or whatever. Then you're playing a bad game. I think somebody used the term gatekeep, that the game lock or gatekeep content. It's like, no, the content is the gameplay, right? That's the content, right? It's not the story. As much as you love the story, I love stories. We talk about stories, but that's not the meat and potatoes of video games. And then I think someone that I think a lot of people found very insulting, and I understand why, but I gotta say it anyway because it's true. It goes back to the comment about the movie, right? Maybe this game is not for you. As much as you want to get that story, maybe this is not a game for you. This is not the format for you. Or simply put, you don't want to play games, or at least play most games out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't, it's. Let me put it this way. And I'm going to connect to something we're talking about here. It's the reason why many now video games have more story, right? And they're focusing on story, like Ubisoft would like to become more RPGs, but also have stuff like microtransactions that boost your XP. They're playing you on that. They're playing on you saying, you don't really want to play this game. You just want to see the next cutscene where Alexius just talks dirty like a porn star, like a Greek porn star to some NPC, and imagine them doing the dirty somewhere, right? Or next time they shove a stone a goat's butt, which is funny and it's fun and it's part of the experience. So we're gonna, if you pay us, I don't know, $250 or something, we're gonna give you this little XP. If you pre-order the game and pay extra, we're gonna give you the XP, right? That to me sounds manipulative because they know there's a certain part of their audience,
their fan base,
fan base who literally doesn't want to play the game. So having said all of that, which I said a lot, and I see you nodding here and put it to the chat as well, give me the kind of arguments because I don't want to be just straw manning people real concerns.
So there is a point where I have seen reviewers bring up the fact that like, oh, this game doesn't have like, a color blindness option and, may not have X, Y, and Z. And I speak as somebody who isn't disabled in any kind of way that would probably impair my enjoyment of a video game. A lot of it, I think it's kind of like, it's great if we can cater to people with like disabilities whenever we can, but it shouldn't be something that's like a requirement because it comes down to whether a company has the time and resources to cater to possibly a small percentage of their audience that may have these disabilities or may not even have these disabilities, or their disabilities wouldn't impair their judgment or their enjoyment of said game. Because I think it's also going to depend on what the game is. But at the same time, there is the point of like, no, skipping gameplay. And right now, playing Yakuza 0, there is a lot of pointless combat in there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you that. But the game actually does, halfway through it, give you a way to kind of skip it. And that's by just like, it gives you this ability to throw money that comes out of your money that you have to spend. You have to spend money on everything in order to unlock new abilities, do a bunch of stuff. You need money, but you can actually like just throw your money away and it stops enemies from attacking you. Granted, there's a lot of melodramatic combat, pointless combat in the story itself. So, but I don't know, like this, and you could actually just skip a lot of that. Like, oh, if we cut this fight, it's poorly designed. There's no other way around it. It's just there because the point of the game is to enjoy like this mindless, pointless violence that's just so hyper exaggerated, because it is. You can't. Part of the enjoyment of the combat is just seeing Kiryu just beat the living crap out of people in these bizarre ways that would kill them. And somehow at the end of the combat, they're all alive and they're just fine. They're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I tried to start crap with you," and completely fine.
I mean, also, the thing is, like, if you say, "Oh, let's talk about other and that's another thing. It's like not all games. There's another aspect of this that's what we call the combat binaries. That it's very easy for video games, and I think we always put a pin on this and talk about this particular gameplay in the future. So we're going to touch on that and then repeat ourselves later in the year, sometime later. But the combat binary is sort of the easiest gameplay element, right? Because combat is visceral. Combat is, hey, win, you live, you win, you lose, you die, right? That's very straightforward. Not all games run on combat, and many times there are situations where they shouldn't have combat, right? There's genuine situations where there's no combat. Let's go back to let's go a small well of games we always talk about. The scene in Mass Effect 3 where what's her name? Not Kylo Ren. It's kind of Kylo Ren type character, but
Kai Lang.
Kai Lang shows up, and you're gonna have this very long dissertation with him. He's talking and pacing about, and it's really you're talking with the Elusive Man. And spoilers. Elusive Man wants the same thing you're looking for, which is a MacGuffin to feed the larger MacGuffin, and you then have a fight. That complete fight is infuriating because it's completely pointless. Now, it isn't pointless because it gets in the way of the story, because in many ways the story, you already know what's going to happen. It's that it happens, and to me feels pointless because no matter how well you do in the fight, well, unless you lose, in which case you have to do it over and over again, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, it's putting the cart before the horse because you're trying to use a gameplay element to tell the story, where simply put, having this conversation and then going to exactly what happens after the combat would probably instill the sense of the sense that they want to instill that you're powerless and you can't do anything about it, and the bad guys have won, right? They shouldn't necessarily win by cutscene power to the max, but they can do this, right? Because something happened in cutscenes, missiles fly, and they have superior firepower, even though you fought more powerful enemies before that. But you get it, right? It's
like you could just go transition from the one cutscene to the other of him just like demonstrating his power, and it's like, oh, like he just immediately just cuts everyone down and takes what he needs and leaves. And leaves you for dead without the pointless combat, the tedious, pointless combat, because they're overpowered. You get him down to a certain point, he retreats, and then he hides behind a gunship, and then like he regenerates his shields, and then you have to rinse, repeat until like, oh, haha, it was pointless because I win anyways.
In fact, you can even skip the part when they try to attack him. It's like they try to attack him, he just like puts a shield up. You can put a pull shield up, and he calls the gunship. Like, he says, I think in the cutscene, target the supports, right? And you
Hmm.
can have the thing where, bullets start sparking because he's using his shield, right? He's not attacking, he starts using his shield, buying time, and then you see the missiles come in, take out supports, and the thing starts collapsing. It's like, and then he just throws in like a total badass is supposed to do. That kind of makes sense. It's like, I'm not gonna fight you. I don't need to fight you. It's pointless to fight you. I have a gunship. I know I've been here before. I know how this works. You're outmaneuvered, right? If you want to instill that on players as part of the story, you can do that without even having the players fighting. But that's one of the points where it's pointless because you don't achieve anything,
Hmm.
right? And I think also, again, I talk about putting the cart before the horse is like, because we have this idea of storytelling, we also have this idea that many, if not all, video games are designed to deliver a story, like a movie or a television show, etc. And we expect the same things. I'm of the mind that video games are games, and that what makes video games as an art form, right? Because there's all the discussion about what is and isn't an art form, and what video games are art or not, right? Is gameplay, right? That
Hmm.
you can tie certain emotions through gameplay, like frustration and anger and fear. That the again, what you do in a game, it's what's important, right? Otherwise, you could, like that person who wrote in all caps, watch a movie, man, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
or nowadays you could watch a Let's Play.
you can watch someone else play the game, right, and have their discussion about what it is. What's transformative about gameplay is by video games is the gameplay. Now,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
also I think the fear is that if you start putting not only we're to talk about this, they're going to do the thing where they're gonna charge you for it. Oh, we know you want to skip this, so pay us extra money, right?
yeah.
Or we are going to put a skip button because we don't really want to spend the time and effort to make this game worthwhile. And only people who are dumb enough to bang their heads against the wall playing whatever combat or driving or flying or doing the puzzles or whatever, they're the ones going to spend all the time, and you can just click, 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 right? And some people said in the thread that I was talking about, it's like, oh, well, what about, being able to skip cutscenes? Like, okay, let me give you a reason why most people skip cutscenes. There's two reasons. First, the story is garbage. It's like
Mhm.
the voice acting is bad, the situation is bad, and you don't have no patience for it. Far Cry 5. Or what happens in Mass Effect and many other games, you watch the cutscene, you got into combat, right? You failed in combat. So what you got to do? You got to go back, and the point of the save point is before the cutscene. So you get to listen to everybody saying the same thing over and over and over again. You know already the story because you know what they told you. You know that part of the story. You just want to get to the. If you really want to get to the next part of the story, you have to fight the. You have to win the combat. And that's why you skip the cutscene because you already know. You already know what's gonna be said. You've chosen all the dialogue options. You see all the variations. You know what's gonna happen. So why don't you get to the part that you're supposed to get to? That one we the video game industry has to get away from combat as being the primary way of doing video games because there's many other things: puzzle, building, construction, driving, flying. And I'm thinking if people really put their minds to it, they can create even more types of gameplay. But at the same time, in my position is that it's a dead end if our solution to these problems, and if we conflict accessibility with taking away the gameplay, where you're gonna end up is either badly designed games because they're designed to exploit people's temperaments and exasperation, and so you get to pay for more stuff in game. So essentially, you buy a game that requires you to pay more money just to play it, or we're not going to have the kind of quantitative improvements that are needed in order to make better games.
Hmm. And so I sort of think of like an example would be Undertale. Like you, I think trying to sit there and watch every like all the fun interactions on as a video, you wouldn't get the same impact if you didn't actually play the game. Like the game, it needs to be played because it's part of the experience. It's not just like sitting there and watching and reading the story or reading dialogue, and you actually have to go through all of this. You have to make decisions, you have to make choices, and part of that is the combat, what you do in the combat. Like, and removing that, it lessens the experience and what the author's intent as part of the experience is.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the best stories for video games, when you write a story for a video game, the best stories are the ones that really encapsulate what you're doing, right? The active reactive, right? It's the, oh, instead of doing something that seems pointless, it actually gives meaning to what you're doing. That's another thing. If something feels pointless, it basically is because it may have no connection to what's going on,
Yeah.
right? It's like, oh, I did a thing, like we talk about the Kai Lang fight, and it had no impact on the story. So even if
Hmm.
you're thinking story first, the reason why the fight is pointless is because nothing changed, right? So you had a sequence that did nothing. If I actually could change things even a little bit, right? Maybe even make Kai Lang like hesitate, like, well, like, oh, this guy's tougher than I thought, right? Whatever, or cower or react in a different way. Maybe you can say that there's some point to the combat because you get to drive the story, right? Uh, but it's
Although
badly.
I think he'll express just, "Oh, I'm mad. I'll get Shepard. Ooh, I beat him, but he's still alive." That's
Which is,
and
so you can, if you, the point was to make him feel, again, look like a badass, then just skip the whole point, right? It's like, um so yeah, I think this is, it comes from a well-meaning place.
yeah, because I often think of in my occupation, what happens if I get even temporarily or permanently injured with my hands, because that's part of my occupational risk. Is like, how hard would it make it my life trying to play video games? I actually had a coworker who, a big gamer in Final Fantasy 14. He plays 14 online, and he got injured. His hands were injured, and he had he had a lot of time off from work, but there he couldn't really play much because his hands were so hurt, and like it he couldn't like sit. There's no way for him to play the game without the use of his hands.
Yeah, so I think that, yeah, I'm all in all for making games more accessible to more people, mechanical ways, colorblind ways. Make what's there good enough, make what's there engaging enough that more people want to play them, and then make it so that game modes and control schemes, even use Rumble. Like, for example, people who
Mhm.
are visually impaired or hard of hearing, you can use Rumble to signify more than just a hit.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of stuff that is actually not being done, and just the sort of easy answer to skip, because that just opens the door to a lot of other stuff that the video game industry sort of doesn't want to discuss, because it gets in that whole what is and is in the game situation nobody really wants to
Yeah.
touch, right? And it's just, it's a, you know, it's a
Yeah.
cat, a box full of cats basically.
Yeah. Like Yakuza, I'm if I'm playing at like a normal difficulty, there's actually a point where I was having difficulty getting past this battle, and it just puts you back at like it kind of makes sort of like a mini auto save where like, oh, we'll just put you back at the beginning of the battle, which is a nice like, hey, accommodation, like, oh, you're having trouble. And then if I kept losing, and then it just asked me, hey, you're having trouble with this, would you like to temporarily turn the difficulty down to easy so
Ah, perfectly
you
acceptable,
can
yeah.
get past it? Like, I think like those are fine, mini like accessibilities.
Yeah, and anti-frustration measures are always welcome, right?
Yeah.
Quality of life
And
stuff,
that'd
right?
be one thing. It's like, hey, you're having trouble with this difficulty. Would you like to buy for the low price of $3.99, like, an infinite God mode ability?
Yeah, like, and it seems to be so easily exploited. And it's already being exploited. Like I said, with XP boots and all that, it's like oh, the person who played WoW and bought a character, pre-made character, because they just want to experience the end game. And what usually tend to happen was they went to the end game because they actually never played World of Warcraft in the extension. They didn't know how that particular character worked. They didn't have all the macros. They didn't know how all the combos, and they didn't know how the end game actually worked. So they were like, I have this very uber powerful character. Oh, total party wipe because I didn't know what my role in the party was in this 15-man raid. So I was like, oops.
And back to like the whole just watch a movie kind of thing. I think, not to say that like Let's Plays would be a full substitute for playing yourself, but it could come in handy in terms of a Let's Play because you're also experiencing the gameplay,
Hmm.
especially if you're watching someone else play it and experience their frustrations with it and like what's good about it, what's bad about it. You sort of I think you get a little more from just watching like say the cutscenes kind of strung together.
Yeah, and also I think with cutscenes strung together,
You're
it
still missing certain things too because they're small things that are usually tied into the gameplay, whether it be like dialogue in the middle of the combat as you're fighting and
yeah,
or
and
just kind of running around and exploring the
And
world.
I'm also thinking this like, oh, I saw one person comes up a game dev also in Tumblr. It's like, well, I am a game dev, so I would certainly put this. And it's like, and I answered back. They didn't answer to me. It's like, oh, so you would charge $60, $60+ for an option for essentially the movie, the game, where a whole season of an American television show, which has 22 episodes, runs about 20 hours, costs about $40. Isn't that a
Mm,
little too much?
yeah.
If you really want an option, wouldn't you want like a digital copy of this? Like a, I guess I suggested this. Like you can have like online comics. If you just want the story and want the you know the dialogue choices, we can go. Okay, let's do a better version of the Genesis comic in Mass Effect 2,
Hmm.
where you just talk and you see and you have the options like, oh yeah, I've romanced this person, I talked to this other person, I saved this person. Make that and charge 10, 15, $20, and people who want that don't get caught off on the story. In fact, they probably will have as
Or,
form as interactive fiction. They
or
would have a
combat.
much better go at it than having stuff they clearly don't like and it's pretty boring and it's pointless to them. So there's ways to accommodate them without hollowing out the experience or giving designers a cop out like, well, we didn't really do that very well because we stuck two very long dungeons on top of one another. Yeah, the Mage Tower, uh, in Origins. We kind of screwed that up, but hey, you can skip it, so don't worry
Hmm.
about it. We'll never we'll never fix that ever again because it's a built-in fix of a skip button. So that's my
Yeah.
take on it. Like I said, it's a very hard line take. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with it, and feel free to do that here in the chat or in the comments here on the bot or in YouTube when we put it on up. So that's basically all I have to say about this. Unless you have anything more to throw into the hat.
Nope. Other than like, yeah, there's certain. I think it really comes down to whether a game is poorly poorly designed in
Mm-hmm.
terms. So I think back like the only really real game that I completely stopped playing and just watched a let's play of was like the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword because you had to use the motion controllers and they weren't very good. At least my husband and I didn't think they were very good, and it degraded our enjoyment of the game. But we sort of kind of want to know, hey, you know, what's happening, what's going on, even though we weren't really digging the story itself all that much. But
Mm-hmm.
we were like, well, let's find out what happened. And we watched like Laura K. Buzz's playthrough of that since she was so like, oh, I really love this game.
Yeah.
Like, well, let's watch her play that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because she's someone who actually has expressed having difficulties with certain control schemes, but she was able to use it that way, which,
Yeah,
again,
and sometimes
adaptability.
and sometimes it is difficult, especially when if you have like a lack of coordination of some sort, or I mean, or even if you for some reason you just can't master whatever pushes the buttons that they want you the developer wants you to have. And at some points it would be nice to kind of like, oh, can I just I'm having really trouble with this point of the game where can I skip it?
Yeah. So, Chapelmon, where can we find you on the interwebs if people are interested in seeing your stuff?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much anywhere. I am Chapelmon on underscore Aragon on Twitch and Twitter, and you can find me at Chapelmon on YouTube.
Yes, and I'll say that he finished finally the drop 2 weeks ago, but it's still there and will be there for quite some time. The final episode of the analysis of the Citadel DLC. An excellent little episode compared to, I would suggest everybody watch the Ghost Chapelmon underscore Aragon on YouTube and watch the entire
Or
series or
it's just Chapelmon on
Chapelmon,
YouTube.
yeah.
Yeah, and You're not just saying that because you have a small cameo in it.
No, just not saying that. And if you want to find my stuff, we continue playing Pathfinder Kingmaker. Hopefully, I can find my way around a total party kill, which is stuck with me in the last 2 episodes. Talk about difficulty and dealing with that, so we can probably conquer the old Troll King and his Kobold ally. We do that on 8 in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern in the U.S. Although there will be a change of time adjustment therein, because of course we have daylight saving times coming up. We'll make the adjustment soon enough. I think it's halfway through November. But if you want to keep up with the channel, you can also sub, follow, and join the Discord, which is the links down below. And I always announce when any new episodes are going to drop. Now, also this month, we're going to do more Hack the Fifth and other role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game design streams. Expect more of that, especially in Roll20. So if you're interested in that, again, the Discord, a follow and or subs would certainly help you out. So thank you all for coming, and thank you once again, Varagian Sire, for being both the first person to share and the first person to sub to the Lessons Learned 1 channel. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.